Hi, everyone. My name is Heidi McKillop, and I'm here with secondstreet.org. We are speaking today with Tammy and Rob McCutcheon, and we're going to be getting their take on rotational workers and the issues with COVID restrictions coming into the province in New Brunswick, where they're located. So thank you guys for coming on today. We really appreciate it.
No, thank you for having us.
We also have Bella the cat that may occasionally make a bit of an entrance, which I love. So I really want to start with Rob first from your end. So how does rotation work, and how have the restrictions really affected your travel and coming back to your family in New Brunswick?
Well, it just started. This is my first run having to isolate for the full time I'm home. I work 2 weeks in, 2 weeks out, where I work in Northern Ontario. When I come home now, it's basically stuck in the house until I go back to the airport to fly back to work. And because of that, I have two daughters who now live with my sister because they're in high school and can't afford to take the 2 weeks off to quarantine with me at home. And because I can't quarantine in the basement like before, anyone in the household has to quarantine. So because they need to go get their education, they're forced to go stay with my sister.
Yes, exactly. Like you said, you can't have your kids coming in and out of school like that. Obviously for obvious reasons for their education.
Yes, exactly.
Mm-hmm. And so, how has this affected your family, Tammy, on your side? Obviously being a mom and having to cope with all of this as well, it's probably hard for you to isolate and to be quarantined as well.
Yeah, so because of this new mandate, actually, I was working and it came out Friday that we had to be actually separated, or else you couldn't. He had to go stay in a hotel or a suite or something, but we still thought, I don't know why, but the basement was okay. And when we realized it wasn't, I was actually laid off. So I had to choose between my spouse and my job. And I said, I'm not going without not seeing Robbie. So they laid me off like 20 minutes after Dr. Russell announced that I didn't have a job.
Oh my God. I'm so sorry to hear that. Do you, so has the government said how long this is restrictions going to last? Is that kind of the issue for you guys, the unclarity around it and the lack of timeline?
Yeah, there hasn't been a timeline at all. There's no light at the end of the tunnel, let's say. As far as we know, until there's a handle on it, we're going to be stuck going to work, coming home to quarantine, and back to work. So
Right.
there's no end light as of now.
And Rob, you said you worked in Northern Ontario, correct?
Yes.
And so are you quarantining up in camp at all, or have you heard of other people quarantining in camp prior to coming back into the province? I would say that most of these times, these jobs are pretty isolated as they are in kind of the global context of interacting with other people.
Yes, like my work site's approximately 110 kilometers north of Thunder Bay, and we catch a bus, we go to camp. We're at camp for 14 days, isolated away from everyone else. They do have a protocol there, which is far beyond what is necessary. We have pre-screening before we enter camp. We have screening every day before we go to work. Masks are 100% all the time. The only time we don't have a mask on when we're at camp is whether we're eating or our own room. So basically, the whole time we're at camp, we wear a mask. They do the social distancing. We do have an option to take three tests while we're at work, but it doesn't help us because we still have to travel through Toronto or Montreal airport to get back to New Brunswick, right, where we could be able to quarantine for 5 days, have a COVID test. If you were negative, you still self-monitored, and you went for a second test, and you were good to go. Most travelers or rotational workers, we go far and beyond what most people do in an average day when it comes to following the protocol for COVID, because it's basically instilled in us when we're at work. Always wash your hands, social distance, just basically follow protocol. And we had an outbreak at camp back in April, and unfortunately, I believe it was 28 people were infected from COVID. But since then, we've had a few people that have come to camp with COVID, but because of our camp protocol, they've been isolated and sent off site right away. So it hasn't spread at all. So
Right. And going into the province as well. So is it my understanding that the rotation workers now are not getting tested at all? We're going back home.
no, we don't have that option anymore to get tested. It's automatically, you fly into New Brunswick, you get into a vehicle, you drive home, you stay home until you drive back to the airport to fly back to work.
Right. And I've also heard that on a federal level, you guys are considered essential workers. But for whatever reason, the province has recently deemed that you guys are not considered essential workers anymore. Is that correct? Or do you know of that?
As far as I know, mining has never been an essential for workers in New Brunswick, because we don't have a mining sector here. But in Ontario, they're still considered essential for the economy. So
Right.
provincials have their own choice to deem who is essential and who isn't.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so how do you think that this is going to affect your community? I mean, what I've heard of recently, and I've gotten quite a few emails and quite a few comments in my messages about folks looking to move to other provinces because they want to be with their family and still have a job. So are you guys kind of in that realm? Are you guys debating about moving to Ontario just to keep it in the same province? Or what's kind of your game plan moving from here?
For right now, no immediate changes. Figure out what's going to go on with the situation. But if it does progress any length of time, definitely moving back to Ontario would be an option for us.
Yeah. And Tammy, how do you feel about that?
I have all my family's in Ontario, so I'm game.
So you're pushing it more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's holding us back is the kids. Like my daughter will be in grade 12 next year. And it's just, yeah. So I think we just have more of the kids. Thinking about the kids right now, the effects that would have a move right now would be on her and all of them.
Yeah. And how are your kids dealing with you not being able to see you, Rob? And, obviously, Tammy, you're dealing with the emotions at home, and I'm sure it hasn't been easy on your family unit whatsoever.
No, luckily, like I said, my sister was able to take my two girls in.
Yeah.
We have been able to see them, but it's basically, they'll text me, tell me when they're going to drive by the house, and I'll open up the garage and I'll wave as they drive down the road, or
They ring the bell when they drop food off,
or they'll drive in the driveway and we'll basically talk. I'll be in the garage, they'll be in the car, and we'll talk that way. But
yeah.
Besides that, it's pretty rough. We're lucky we can FaceTime them and things, but it's still not the same. Like I said, with them having to basically uproot and move in with my sister while I'm home, just so they can go to school,
it's ridiculous.
It is ridiculous.
Yeah.
So.
And what would you guys like to see? Like, if you were in charge of this whole COVID challenge, I mean, obviously governments are, they have different ways of dealing with it. There's a lot of moving parts to keeping the public safe, but also keeping jobs afloat and families together. So what would you like to see in terms of a policy change that would really help your family and still respect the spirit of the pandemic and making sure the communities are safe?
If they were to go back to the 5 days of self-monitoring at your own home, and then a test on the 7th day or on the 5th day, 9th day, you know what? I had no issue with that.
No, I don't think anyone did.
A lot of people were happy with that.
Yeah.
There were some people that didn't want to get the test, so they just isolated the whole time they were home anyway, but it was nice to have that option.
Mm-hmm.
So even if they bring back that, and I think a lot of rotational workers would agree to that. because right now the rules are, they're not, there's no standard. I had a friend who drove from out west. He works in Alberta. He drives trucks, moving oil rigs. His roommate out there works on the oil rigs. They drove across Canada, got to New Brunswick, and because my friend had his class 1 trucker's license, he was exempt from isolating when he got to New Brunswick, whereas his roommate and the guy that he just drove across Canada with had to isolate for 14 days. It makes no sense where the government comes up with things. For a rotational worker, like I said, when I leave home, I have to drive to Moncton. I fly from Moncton to Toronto, and then Toronto to Thunder Bay, and then I get on the bus and go to work. The only time I'm actually interacting with the public, other than, let's say, my work bubble or my home bubble, is in Toronto. And I even took pictures when I came through last run. It is literally dead. You could roll a bowling ball down the aisle and not hit anyone. I'm currently just getting off work and I've been dropped off at the airport. Just so you can see, that's beautiful Thunder Bay. I'm here at the airport. As you can see, hardly want anyone here. There's people that are crossing the border every day, going back and forth to Quebec, Maine, and they're trying to blame the cases on rotational workers. And the other people, the truck drivers, meet more people than we do in the airports. So they have to use a bit of common sense.
Yes, and that's the thing as well, is that percentage-wise, if you look at the stats, it seems that rotational workers are very little to do with COVID coming into the province.
Yeah, and that's the thing, and our New Brunswick Premier and the Health Minister will not give us that data. They just classify everyone under travel. Even when we fill in our travel forms to return to New Brunswick, we're not essential workers. Okay. We have to fill out we're a New Brunswick resident returning to New Brunswick. Right. So consider us essential workers. So they basically, anyone who travels is getting thrown into the same category. And whether it be students coming in from out of province, out of country, other people just traveling for pleasure, if they bring COVID back in New Brunswick, they fall under the traveling group, which the rotational workers are under, which is rather unfair.
Right. Well, guys, thank you so much for your time. I greatly appreciate this, and I wish you and the family all the best, during these COVID times. And I hope the regulations do change so that you guys are able to maintain some stability in your family.
Yes, we can only hope. And thank you for taking the time to get this to most people, because a lot of people don't understand what is actually going on except for what they read in the news. So we definitely.
Totally. Well, thank you guys. Have a great night.
Okay, you too. Take care.